The fourth battle continued, in which Neptune assists the Greeks, the axe of Idomeneus. Neptune, concerned for the loss of the Grecians, upon seeing the fortification forced by Hector, who had entered the gate near the station of the Achilles, assumes the shape of Calchas and inspires those heroes to oppose him. Then, in the form of one of the generals, encourages the other Greeks who had retired to their vessels. The Achilles form their troops in a close phalanx and put a stop to Hector and the Trojans. Several deeds of valor are performed. Merions, losing his spear in the encounter, repairs to seek another at the tent of Idomeneus. This occasions a conversation between those two warriors, who return together to the battle. Idomeneus signalizes his courage above the rest. He kills Othryoneus, Asius, and Alcathous. Deiphobus and Aeneas march against him, and at length Idomeneus retires. Menelaus wounds Helenus and kills Pisander. The Trojans are repulsed on the left wing. Hector still keeps his ground against the Achilles, till being galled by the Locrian slingers and archers, Polydamas advises to call a council of war. Hector approves of his advice, but goes first to rally the Trojans, upbraids Paris, rejoins Polydamas, meets Ajax again, and renews the attack. The 28th day still continues. The scene is between the Grecian wall and the seashore. When now the Thunderer on the sea-beat coast had fixed great Hector and his conquering host, he left them to the fates, in bloody fray to toil and struggle through the well-fought day. Then turned to Thracia from the field of fight those eyes that shed insufferable light, to where the Mysians prove their martial force, and hardy Thracians tame the savage horse, and where the far-famed Hippomolgian strays, renowned for justice and for length of days, thrice happy race. That, innocent of blood from milk, in Noxious, seek their simple food, Jove sees delighted, and avoids the scene of guilty Troy, of arms and dying men. No aid, he deems, to either host is given, while his high law suspends the powers of heaven. Meantime the monarch of the watery main observed the Thunderer, nor observed in vain. In Samothracia, on a mountain's brow, whose waving woods o'erhung the deeps below, he sat, and round him cast his azure eyes where Ida's misty tops confusedly rise. Below, fair Ilion's glittering spires were seen, the crowded ships and sable seas between. There, from the crystal chambers of the main emerged, he sat, and mourned his Argives slain. At Jove incensed, with grief and fury stung, prone down the rocky steep he rushed along, fierce as he passed, the lofty mountains nod, the forest shakes. Earth trembled as he trod, and felt the footsteps of the immortal god. From realm to realm 3 ample strides he took, and at the 4th, the distant Aegis shook. Far in the bay his shining palace stands, eternal frame. Not raised by mortal hands, this having reached, his brass-hoofed steeds he reins, fleet as the winds and decked with golden manes. Refulgent arms his mighty limbs enfold, immortal arms of adamant and gold. He mounts the car, the golden scourge applies, he sits superior, and the chariot flies. His whirling wheels the glassy surface sweep, the enormous monsters rolling o'er the deep gambol around him on the watery way, and heavy whales in awkward measures play. The sea subsiding spreads a level plain, exults, and owns the monarch of the main. The parting waves before his coursers fly, the wondering waters leave his axle dry. Deep in the liquid regions lies a cave, between where Tenedos the surges lave, and rocky Imbruse breaks the rolling wave. There the great ruler of the azure round stopped his swift chariot, and his steeds unbound, fed with ambrosial herbage from his hand, and linked their fetlocks with a golden band, infringible, immortal. There they stay, the father of the floods pursues his way. Where, like a tempest, darkening heaven around, or fiery deluge that devours the ground, the impatient Trojans, in a gloomy throng embattled rolled, as Hector rushed along. To the loud tumult and the barbarous cry the heavens re-echo, and the shores reply. They vow destruction to the Grecian name, and in their hopes the fleets already flame. But Neptune, rising from the seas profound, the god whose earthquakes rock the solid ground, now wears a mortal form. Like Calchas seen, such his loud voice and such his manly mien, his shouts incessant every Greek inspire. But most the Achilles, adding fire to fire. Neptune rising from the sea. 'Tis yours, O warriors, all our hopes to raise. O recollect your ancient worth and praise. 'Tis yours to save us if you cease to fear. Flight, more than shameful, is destructive here. On other works though Troy with fury fall, and pour her armies o'er our battered wall, there Greece his strength. But this part o'erthrown, her strength were vain. I dread for you alone, here Hector rages like the force of fire, vaunts of his gods, and calls high Jove his sire. If yet some heavenly power your breast excite, breathe in your hearts and string your arms to fight. Greece yet may live, her threatened fleet maintain, and Hector's force and Jove's own aid be vain. Then with his scepter, that the deep controls, he touched the chiefs and steeled their manly souls. Strength not their own, the touch divine imparts, prompts their light limbs and swells their daring hearts. Then, as a falcon from the rocky height, her quarry seen, impetuous at the sight, forth springing instant, darts herself from high shoots on the wing and skims along the sky. Such, and so swift, the power of ocean flew, the wide horizon shut him from their view. The inspiring god Achilles, active son, perceived the first, and thus to Telamon. Some god, my friend, some god in human form favoring descends, and wills to stand the storm. Not couches this, the venerable seer, short as he turned, I saw the power appear. I marked his parting, and the steps he trod. His own bright evidence reveals a god. Even now some energy divine I share, and seem to walk on wings and tread in air. With equal ardor Telamon returns, my soul is kindled, and my bosom burns, new rising spirits all my force alarm, lift each impatient limb and brace my arm. This ready arm, unthinking, shakes the dart, the blood pours back and fortifies my heart. Singly, methinks, yon towering chief I meet, and stretch the dreadful Hector at my feet. Full of the god that urged their burning breast, the heroes thus their mutual warmth expressed. Neptune meanwhile the rooted Greeks inspired, who, breathless, pale, with length of labors tired, pant in the ships, while Troy to conquest calls and swarms victorious o'er their yielding walls. Trembling before the impending storm they lie, while tears of rage stand burning in their eye. Greece sunk they thought, and this their fatal hour, but breathe new courage as they feel the power. Teucer and Latus first his words excite, then stern Peneleus rises to the fight, Thoas, Deipyrus, in arms renowned, and Merion next, the impulsive fury found. Last Nestor's son the same bold ardor takes, while thus the god the martial fire awakes. O lasting infamy, O dire disgrace to chiefs of vigorous youth and manly race. I trusted in the gods, and you, to see brave Greece victorious and her navy free. Ah, no, the glorious combat you disclaim, and one black day clouds all her former fame. Heavens! What a prodigy these eyes survey, unseen, unthought, till this amazing day. Fly we at length from Troy's oft-conquered bands, and falls our fleet by such inglorious hands. A rout undisciplined, a straggling train, not born to glories of the dusty plain, like frighted fawns from hill to hill pursued, a prey to every savage of the wood. Shall these, so late who trembled at your name, invade your camps, involve your ships in flame? A change so shameful, say what cause has wrought? The soldier's baseness, or the general's fault? Fools! Will ye perish for your leader's vice, the purchase infamy and life the price? 'Tis not your cause, Achilles' injured fame, another's is the crime, but yours the shame. Grant that our chief offend through rage or lust, must you be cowards if your king's unjust? Prevent this evil, and your country save, small thought retrieves the spirits of the brave. Think and subdue. On dastards dead to fame I waste no anger, for they feel no shame. But you, the pride, the flower of all our host, my heart weeps blood to see your glory lost. Nor deem this day, this battle, all you lose, a day more black, a fate more vile ensues. Let each reflect, who prizes fame or breath on endless infamy, on instant death, for lo, the fated time, the appointed shore, hark! The gates burst, the brazen barriers roar. Impetuous Hector thunders at the wall, the hour, the spot, to conquer or to fall. These words the Grecians' fainting hearts inspire, and listening armies catch the godlike fire. Fixed at his post was each bold Ajax found, with well-ranged squadrons strongly circled round. So close their order, so dispose their fight, as Pallas, self might view with fixed delight, or had the god of war inclined his eyes, the god of war had owned a just surprise. A chosen phalanx, firm, resolved as fate, descending Hector and his battle wait. An iron scene gleams dreadful o'er the fields, armor in armor locked, and shields in shields, spears lean on spears. On targets targets throng, helms stuck to helms, and man drove man along. The floating plumes unnumbered wave above, as when an earthquake stirs the nodding grove, and levelled at the skies with pointing rays, their brandished lances at each motion blaze. Thus breathing death in terrible array, the close compacted legions urged their way, fierce they drove on, impatient to destroy. Troy charged the first, and Hector first of Troy. As from some mountain's craggy forehead torn a rock's round fragment flies, with fury born, which from the stubborn stone a torrent rends, precipitate the ponderous mass descends. From steep to steep the rolling ruin bounds, at every shock the crackling wood resounds. Still gathering force it smokes, and urged amain whirls, leaps, and thunders down, impetuous to the plain, there stops, so Hector. Their whole force he proved, resistless when he raged, and when he stopped, unmoved. On him the war is bent, the darts are shed, and all their falchions wave around his head. Repulsed he stands, nor from his stand retires, but with repeated shouts his army fires. Trojans, be firm, this arm shall make your way through yon square body, and that black array stand, and my spear shall rout their scattering power. Strong as they seem, embattled like a tower, for he that Juno's heavenly bosom warms, the first of gods, this day inspires our arms. He said, and roused the soul in every breast, urged with desire of fame, beyond the rest forth marched Deiphobus, but marching, held before his wary steps his ample shield. Bold Merion aimed a stroke, nor aimed it wide. The glittering javelin pierced the tough bull-hide, but pierced not through. Unfaithful to his hand, the point broke short and sparkled in the sand. The Trojan warrior, touched with timely fear, on the raised orb to distance bore the spear. The Greek, retreating, mourned his frustrate blow, and cursed the treacherous lance that spared a foe. Then to the ships with surly speed he went, to seek a surer javelin in his tent. Meanwhile with rising rage the battle glows, the tumult thickens, and the clamor grows. By Teucer's arm the warlike Imbrius bleeds, the son of Mentor, rich in generous steeds. Ere yet to Troy the sons of Greece were led in fair Peteus, verdant pastures bred. The youth had dwelt, remote from war's alarms, and blessed in bright Metesicast's arms. This nymph, the fruit of Priam's ravished joy, allied the warrior to the house of Troy. To Troy, when glory called his arms, he came, and matched the bravest of her chiefs in fame. With Priam's sons, a guardian of the throne, he lived, beloved and honored as his own. Him Teucer pierced between the throat and ear. He groans beneath the Telamonian's spear. As from some far-seen mountain's airy crown, subdued by steel, a tall ash tumbles down, and soils its verdant tresses on the ground, so falls the youth, his arms the fall resound. Then Teucer, rushing to despoil the dead, from Hector's hand a shining javelin fled. He saw, and shunned the death. The forceful dart sung on, and pierced Amphimachus's heart. See Thetis, son of Neptune's forceful line, vain was his courage and his race divine. Prostrate he falls, his clanging arms resound, and his broad buckler thunders on the ground. To seize his beamy helm the victor flies, and just had fastened on the dazzling prize, when Ajax, manly arm a javelin flung, full on the shield's round boss the weapon rung. He felt the shock, nor more was doomed to feel, secure in mail, and sheathed in shining steel. Repulsed he yields, the victor Greeks obtain the spoils contested, and bear off the slain. Between the leaders of the Athenian line, Stichius the brave, Menestheus the divine, deplored Amphimachus, sad object. Lies Imbrius remains the fierce Ajax's prize. As two grim lions bear across the lawn, snatched from devouring hounds, a slaughtered fawn. In their fell jaws high lifting through the wood, and sprinkling all the shrubs with drops of blood, so these, the chief. Great Ajax from the dead strips his bright arms, Iliad lops his head and tossed like a ball, and whirled in air away, at Hector's feet the gory visage lay. The god of ocean, fired with stern disdain, and pierced with sorrow for his grandson slain, inspires the Grecian hearts, confirms their hands, and breathes destruction on the Trojan bands. Swift as a whirlwind rushing to the fleet, he finds the lance-famed Idomen of Crete. His pensive brow the generous care expressed with which a wounded soldier touched his breast, whom in the chance of war a javelin tore, and his sad comrades from the battle bore. Him to the surgeons of the camp he sent. that office paid, he issued from his tent fierce for the fight. To whom the god begun, in Thoa's voice, Andrymon's valiant son, who ruled where Calydon's white rocks arise, and Pleuron's chalky cliffs emblaze the skies. Where's now the imperious vaunt, the daring boast, of Greece victorious and proud Ilion lost? To whom the king, on Greece no blame be thrown, arms are her trade, and war is all her own. Her hardy heroes from the well-fought plains nor fear withholds, nor shameful sloth detains. 'Tis heaven, alas, and Jove's all-powerful doom, that far, far distant from our native home, wills us to fall inglorious. Oh, my friend, once foremost in the fight, still prone to lend or arms or counsels, now perform thy best, and what thou canst not singly, urge the rest. Thus he, and thus the god whose force can make the solid globe's eternal basis shake. Ah, never may he see his native land, but feed the vultures on this hateful strand, who seeks ignobly in his ships to stay, nor dares to combat on the signal day. For this, behold, in horrid arms I shine, and urge thy soul to rival axe with mine. Together let us battle on the plain, two, not the worst, nor even this succor vain, not vain the weakest, if their force unite, but ours, the bravest have confessed in fight. This said, he rushes where the combat burns, swift to his tent the Cretan king returns. From thence, 2 javelins glittering in his hand, and clad in arms that lightened all the strand. Fierce on the foe the impetuous hero drove, like lightning bursting from the arm of Jove, which to pale man the wrath of heaven declares, or terrifies the offending world with wars, in streamy sparkles, kindling all the skies, from pole to pole the trail of glory flies. Thus his bright armor o'er the dazzled throng gleamed dreadful, as the monarch flashed along. Him near his tent Merions attends, whom thus he questions, ever best of friends. O say, in every art of battle skilled, what holds thy courage from so brave a field? On some important message art thou bound, or bleeds my friend by some unhappy wound? Inglorious here, my soul abhors to stay, and glows with prospects of approaching day. O Prince, Merions replies, whose care leads forth the embattled sons of Crete to war, this speaks my grief. This headless lance I wield, the rest lies rooted in a Trojan shield. To whom the Cretan? Enter and receive the wanted weapons, those my tent can give, spears I have store, and Trojan lances all, that shed a luster round the illumined wall, though I disdainful of the distant war, nor trust the dart, nor aim the uncertain spear. Yet hand to hand I fight and spoil the slain, and thence these trophies and these arms I gain. Enter and see on heaps the helmets rolled, and high-hung spears, and shields that flame with gold. Nor vain, said Merion, are our martial toils, we too can boast of no ignoble spoils, but those my ship contains, whence distant far, I fight conspicuous in the van of war, what need I more? If any Greek there be who knows not Merion, I appeal to thee. To this, Idomeneus, the fields of fight have proved thy valor, and unconquered might, and were some ambush for the foes designed, even there thy courage would not lag behind, in that sharp service, singled from the rest, the fear of each, or valor, stands confessed. No force, no firmness, the pale coward shows, he shifts his place. His color comes and goes, a dropping sweat creeps cold on every part. Against his bosom beats his quivering heart, terror and death in his wild eyeballs stare. With chattering teeth he stands and stiffening hair, and looks a bloodless image of despair. Not so the brave, still dauntless, still the same, unchanged his color and unmoved his frame, composed his thought, determined is his eye, and fixed his soul, to conquer or to die, if aught disturb the tenor of his breast. 'Tis but the wish to strike before the rest. In such assays thy blameless worth is known, and every art of dangerous war thy own. By chance of fight whatever wounds you bore, those wounds were glorious all, and all before, such as may teach. 'Twas still thy brave delight Tiapos thy bosom, where thy foremost fight. But why, like infants, cold to honor, charms, stand we to talk when glory calls to arms? Go from my conquered spears the choicest take, and to their owners send them nobly back. Swift at the word bold Merion snatched a spear, and breathing slaughter, followed to the war. So Mars armipotent invades the plain, the wide destroyer of the race of man. Terror, his best beloved son, attends his course armed with stern boldness and enormous force, the pride of haughty warriors to confound, and lay the strength of tyrants on the ground. from Thrace they fly, called to the dire alarms of warring Phlegians and Epherian arms, invoked by both, relentless they dispose to these glad conquest, murderous rout to those. So marched the leaders of the Cretan train, and their bright arms shot horror o'er the plain. Then first spake Merion, shall we join the right, or combat in the center of the fight? Or to the left our wanted succor lend? Hazard and fame all parts alike attend. Not in the center, Idomen replied, our ablest chieftains the main battle guide, each godlike Ajax makes that post his care. And gallant Teucer deals destruction there, skilled, or with shafts to gall the distant field, or bear close battle on the sounding shield. These can the rage of haughty Hector tame, safe in their arms, the navy fears no flame, till Jove himself descends, his bolts to shed, and hurl the blazing ruin at our head. Great must he be, of more than human birth, nor feed like mortals on the fruits of earth. Him neither rocks can crush, nor steel can wound, whom Ajax fells not on the ensanguined ground. In standing fight he mates Achilles, force, excelled alone in swiftness and the course. Then to the left our ready arms apply, and live with glory, or with glory die. He said, and Merion to th appointed place, fierce as the god of battles, urged his pace. Soon as the foe the shining chiefs beheld rush like a fiery torrent o'er the field, their force embodied in a tide they pour. The rising combat sounds along the shore. As warring winds, in serious, sultry rain from different quarters sweep the sandy plain, on every side the dusty whirlwinds rise, and the dry fields are lifted to the skies. Thus by despair, hope, rage, together driven met the black hosts, and meeting darkened heaven. All dreadful glared the iron face of war, bristled with upright spears that flashed afar. Dire was the gleam of breastplates, helms, and shields, and polished arms emblazed the flaming fields. Tremendous scene. That general horror gave, but touched with joy the bosoms of the brave. Saturn's great sons in fierce contention vied, and crowds of heroes in their anger died. The sire of earth and heaven, by Thetis won to crown with glory Peleus, godlike son, willed not destruction to the Grecian powers, but spared a while the destined Trojan towers, while Neptune, rising from his azure main, warred on the king of heaven with stern disdain, and breathed revenge, and fired the Grecian train. Gods of one source, of one ethereal race, alike divine, and heaven their native place, but Jove the greater, firstborn of the skies, and more than men or gods, supremely wise. For this, of Jove's superior might afraid, Neptune in human form concealed his aid. These powers enfold the Greek and Trojan train in war, and discord's adamantine chain, indissolubly strong. The fatal tie is stretched on both, and close compelled they die. Dreadful in arms, and grown in combats gray, the bold Idomeneus controls the day. First by his hand Othryoneus was slain, swelled with false hopes, with mad ambition vain, called by the voice of war to martial fame from high Cabesus, distant walls he came, Cassandra's love he sought, with boasts of power, and promised conquest was the proffered dower. The king consented, by his vaunts abused, the king consented, but the fates refused. Proud of himself and of the imagined bride, the field he measured with a larger stride. Him as he stalked, the Cretan javelin found vain was his breastplate to repel the wound, his dream of glory lost, he plunged to hell, his arms resounded as the boaster fell. The great Idomeneus bestrides the dead, and thus, he cries, behold thy promise sped. Such is the help thy arms to Ilion bring, and such the contract of the Phrygian king. Our offers now, illustrious prince. Receive, for such an aid, what will not Argus give. To conquer Troy, with ours thy forces join, and Count Atrides' fairest daughter thine. Meantime, on further methods to advise, come, follow to the fleet thy new allies, there hear what Greece has on her part to say. He spoke, and dragged the gory corse away. This Asius viewed, unable to contain before his chariot warring on the plain. His crowded coursers, to his squire consigned, impatient panted on his neck behind, to vengeance rising with a sudden spring, he hoped the conquest of the Cretan king. The wary Cretan, as his foe drew near, full on his throat discharged the forceful spear. Beneath the chin the point was seen to glide, and glittered, extant at the further side. As when the mountain oak, or poplar tall or pine, fit mast for some great admiral, groans to the oft-heaved axe, with many a wound, then spreads a length of ruin o'er the ground. So sunk proud Achilles in that dreadful day, and stretched before his much-loved coursers lay. He grinds the dust distained with streaming gore, and, fierce in death, lies foaming on the shore. Deprived of motion, stiff with stupid fear, stands all aghast his trembling charioteer, nor shuns the foe, nor turns the steeds away, but falls transfixed, an unresisting prey. Pierced by Antilochus, he pants beneath the stately car and labors out his breath. Thus Achilles, steeds, their mighty master, gone remain the prize of Nestor's youthful son. Stabbed at the sight, Deiphobus drew nigh, and made with force the vengeful weapon fly. The Cretan saw, and, stooping, caused to glance from his sloped shield the disappointed lance. Beneath the spacious targe, a blazing round, thick with bull hides and brazen orbits bound, on his raised arm by two strong braces stayed. He lay collected in defensive shade. O'er his safe had the javelin idly sung, and on the tinkling verge more faintly rung. Even then the spear the vigorous arm confessed, and pierced, obliquely, King Hypsenor's breast, warmed in his liver, to the ground it bore the chief, his people's guardian now no more. Not unattended, the proud Trojan cries, nor unrevenged, lamented Achilles lies. For thee, through hell's black portals stand displayed, this mate shall joy thy melancholy shade. Heart-piercing anguish at the haughty boast touched every Greek but Nestor's son the most. Grieved as he was, his pious arms attend, and his broad buckler shields his slaughtered friend, till sad Mecistheus and Alastor bore his honored body to the tented shore. Nor yet from fight Idomeneus withdraws, resolved to perish in his country's cause, or find some foe, whom heaven and he shall doom to wail his fate in death's eternal gloom. He sees Alcathous in the front aspire. Great Aeaetes was the hero's sire, his spouse Hippodame, divinely fair, Anchises' eldest hope and darling care, who charmed her parents and her husband's heart with beauty, sense, and every work of art. He once of Ilion's youth the loveliest boy, the fairest she of all the fair of Troy. By Neptune now the hapless hero dies, who covers with a cloud those beauteous eyes and fetters every limb. Yet bent to meet his fate he stands, nor shuns the lance of Crete. Fixed as some column or deep-rooted oak while the winds sleep, his breast received the stroke. Before the ponderous stroke his corslet yields, long used to ward the death in fighting fields. The riven armor sends a jarring sound. His laboring heart heaves with so strong a bound. The long lance shakes and vibrates in the wound, fast flowing from its source, as prone he lay, life's purple tide impetuous gushed away. Then Idomen, insulting o'er the slain, behold Deiphobus. Nor vaunt in vain, see. On one Greek 3 Trojan ghosts attend, this, my third victim, to the shades I send. Approaching now thy boasted might approve, and try the prowess of the seed of Jove. From Jove, enamored of a mortal dame, great Minos, guardian of his country, came. Deucalion, blameless prince, was Minos, heir, his firstborn I, the third from Jupiter, o'er spacious Crete and her bold sons I reign, and thence my ships transport me through the main, lord of a host, o'er all my host I shine, a scourge to thee, thy father, and thy line. The Trojan heard, uncertain or to meet alone, with venturous arms the king of Crete, or seek auxiliar force. At length decreed to call some hero to partake the deed, forthwith Aeneas rises to his thought. For him in Troy's remotest lines he sought, where he, incensed at partial Priam, stands, and sees superior posts in meaner hands. To him, ambitious of so great an aid, the bold Deiphobus approached and said, Now, Trojan prince, employ thy pious arms, if e'er thy bosom felt fair honor's charms. Alcathous dies, thy brother and thy friend, come, and the warrior's loved remains defend. Beneath his cares thy early youth was trained, one table fed you, and one roof contained. This deed to fierce Idomeneus we owe, haste, and revenge it on insulting foe. Aeneas heard, and for a space resigned to tender pity all his manly mind. Then rising in his rage, he burns to fight. The Greek awaits him with collected might. As the fell boar, on some rough mountain's head armed with wild terrors, and to slaughter bred when the loud rustics rise and shout from far, attends the tumult, and expects the war o'er his bent back the bristly horrors rise, fires stream in lightning from his sanguine eyes, his foaming tusks both dogs and men engage. but most his hunters rouse his mighty rage. So stood Idomeneus, his javelin shook, and met the Trojan with a lowering look. Antilochus, Deipyrus were near, the youthful offspring of the god of war, Merion and Epharus, in field renowned. To these the warrior sent his voice around. Fellows in arms, your timely aid unite. Lo, great Aeneas rushes to the fight, sprung from a god, and more than mortal bold, he fresh in youth, and I in arms grown old. Else should this hand, this hour decide the strife, the great dispute of glory or of life. He spoke, and all, as with one soul, obeyed. Their lifted bucklers cast a dreadful shade around the chief. Aeneas too demands assisting forces of his native bands, Paris, Deiphobus, Agenor, join. Co-aids and captains of the Trojan line, in order follow all embodied train. Like Ida's flocks proceeding o'er the plain before his fleecy care, erect and bold, stalks the proud ram, the father of the bold. With joy the swain surveys them, as he leads to the cool fountains, through the well-known meads. So joys Aeneas, as his native band moves on in rank and stretches o'er the land. Round dread Alcathous now the battle rose, on every side the steely circle grows. Now battered breastplates and hacked helmets ring, and o'er their heads unheeded javelins sing. Above the rest, two towering chiefs appear, their great Idomeneus, Aeneas here. Like gods of war, dispensing fate, they stood, and burned to drench the ground with mutual blood. The Trojan weapon whizzed along in air, the Cretan saw, and shunned the brazen spear. Sent from an arm so strong, the missive wood stuck deep in earth, and quivered where it stood. But Oenomes received the Cretan stroke. The forceful spear his hollow corslet broke. It ripped his belly with a ghastly wound, and rolled the smoking entrails on the ground. Stretched on the plain, he sobs away his breath, and furious, grasps the bloody dust in death. The victor from his breast the weapon tears, his spoils he could not, for the shower of spears. Though now unfit an active war to wage, heavy with cumbrous arms, stiff with cold age, his listless limbs unable for the course, in standing fight he yet maintains his force, till faint with labor, and by foes repelled, his tired slow steps he drags from off the field. Deiphobus beheld him as he passed, and, fired with hate, a parting javelin cast. The javelin erred, but held its course along and pierced Ascalaphus, the brave and young. The son of Mars fell gasping on the ground, and gnashed the dust, all bloody with his wound. Nor knew the furious father of his fall, high-throned amidst the great Olympian hall, on golden clouds immortal synods sate, detained from bloody war by Jove and fate. Now, where in dust the breathless hero lay, for slain Ascalaphus commenced the fray. Deiphobus to seize his helmet flies, and from his temples rends the glittering prize. Valiant as Mars, Merion's drew near, and on his loaded arm discharged his spear. He drops the weight, disabled with the pain, the hollow helmet rings against the plain. Swift as a vulture leaping on his prey, from his torn arm the Grecian rent away the reeking javelin, and rejoined his friends. His wounded brother good Polites tends, around his waist his pious arms he threw, and from the rage of battle gently drew him his swift coursers on his splendid car, wrapped from the lessening thunder of the war. To Troy they drove him, groaning from the shore, and sprinkling, as he passed, the sands with gore. Meanwhile fresh slaughter bathes the sanguine ground, heaps fall on heaps, and heaven and earth resound. Bold Epharus by great Aeneas bled, as toward the chief he turned his daring head, he pierced his throat. The bending head, depressed beneath his helmet, nods upon his breast. His shield reversed o'er the fallen warrior lies, and everlasting slumber seals his eyes. Antilochus, as Thune turned him round, transpierced his back with a dishonest wound. The hollow vein, that to the neck extends along the chine, his eager javelin rends. Supine he falls, and to his social train spreads his imploring arms, but spreads in vain. THV exulting victor, leaping where he lay from his broad shoulders tore the spoils away, his time observed. For closed by foes around, on all sides thick the peals of arms resound. His shield embossed the ringing storm sustains, but he impervious and untouched remains. Great Neptune's care preserved from hostile rage this youth, the joy of Nestor's glorious age. In arms intrepid, with the first he fought, faced every foe and every danger sought. His winged lance, resistless as the wind, obeys each motion of the master's mind. Restless it flies, impatient to be free, and meditates the distant enemy. The son of Achilles, Adamas, drew near, and struck his target with the brazen spear fierce in his front. But Neptune wards the blow, and blunts the javelin of eluded foe. In the broad buckler half the weapon stood, splintered on earth flew half the broken wood. Disarmed, he mingled in the Trojan crew, but Merian's spear o'ertook him as he flew deep in the belly's rim an entrance found, where sharp the pang, and mortal is the wound. Bending he fell, and doubled to the ground lay panting. Thus an ox in fetters tied, while death's strong pangs distend his laboring side, his bulk enormous on the field displays, his heaving heart beats thick as ebbing life decays. The spear the conqueror from his body drew, and death's dim shadows swarm before his view. Next brave Deipyrus in dust was laid. King Helenus waved high the Thracian blade, and smote his temples with an arm so strong, the helm fell off, and rolled amid the throng. There for some luckier Greek it rests a prize, for dark in death the godlike owner lies. Raging with grief great Menelaus burns, and fraught with vengeance to the victor turns. That shook the ponderous lance, in act to throw, and this stood adverse with the bended bow, full on his breast the Trojan arrow fell, but harmless bounded from the plated steel. As on some ample barn's well-hardened floor, the winds collected at each open door, while the broad fan with force is whirled around, light leaps the golden grain, resulting from the ground. So from the steel that guards Atrides' heart, repelled to distance flies the bounding dart. Atrides, watchful of the unwary foe, pierced with his lance the hand that grasped the bow, and nailed it to the yew. The wounded hand trailed the long lance that marked with blood the sand, but good Agenor gently from the wound the spear solicits, and the bandage bound. A sling's soft wool, snatched from a soldier's side, at once the tent and ligature supplied. Behold, Pisander, urged by fate's decree, springs through the ranks to fall, and fall by thee, great Menelaus. To enchant thy fame, high-towering in the front the warrior came. First the sharp lance was by Atrides thrown, the lance far distant by the winds was blown. Nor pierced Pisander through Atrides' shield, Pisander's spear fell shivered on the field. Not so discouraged, to the future blind, vain dreams of conquest swell his haughty mind. Dauntless he rushes where the Spartan lord like lightning brandished his far-beaming sword. His left arm high opposed the shining shield, his right beneath the covered poleaxe held. An olive's cloudy grain the handle made, distinct with studs, and brazen was the blade. This on the helm discharged a noble blow, the plume dropped nodding to the plain below, shorn from the crest. Atrides waved his steel, deep through his front the weighty falchion fell. The crashing bones before its force gave way, in dust and blood the groaning hero lay, forced from their ghastly orbs and spouting gore. The clotted eyeballs tumble on the shore. And fierce Atrides spurned him as he bled, tore off his arms, and, loud exulting, said, Thus, Trojans, thus at length be taught to fear, O race perfidious who delight in war. Already noble deeds ye have performed. A princess raped transcends a navy stormed. In such bold feats your impious might approve, without assistance, or the fear of Jove. The violated rights, the ravished dame, our heroes slaughtered and our ships on flame, crimes heaped on crimes, shall bend your glory down, and whelm in ruins yon flagitious town. O thou, great Father, Lord of earth and skies, above the thought of man, supremely wise, if from thy hand the fates of mortals flow, from whence this favor to an impious foe? A godless crew, abandoned and unjust, still breathing rapine, violence, and lust. The best of things, beyond their measure, cloy sleep's balmy blessing, love's endearing joy, the feast, the dance, whate'er mankind desire, even the sweet charms of sacred numbers tire. But Troy forever reaps a dire delight in thirst of slaughter, and in lust of fight. This said, he seized, while yet the carcase heaved, the bloody armor which his train received, then sudden mixed among the warring crew, and the bold son of Pylaemenes slew. Harpalion had through Asia traveled far, following his martial father to the war. Through filial love he left his native shore, never to behold it more. His unsuccessful spear he chanced to fling against the target of the Spartan king, thus of his lance disarmed, from death he flies, and turns around his apprehensive eyes. Him, through the hip transpiercing as he fled, the shaft of Miriam mingled with the dead. Beneath the bone the glancing point descends, and driving down, the swelling bladder rends. Sunk in his sad companion's arms he lay, and in short pantings sobbed his soul away, like some vile worm extended on the ground, while life's red torrent gushed from out the wound. Him on his car, the Paphlagonian train in slow procession bore from off the plain. The pensive father now no more, attends the mournful pomp along the shore, and unavailing tears profusely shed, and, unrevenged, deplored his offspring dead. Paris from far the moving sight beheld, with pity softened and with fury swelled, his honored host, a youth of matchless grace, and loved of all the Paphlagonian race. With his full strength he bent his angry bow, and winged the feathered vengeance at the foe. A chief there was, the brave Euchenor named for riches much, and more for virtue famed, who held his seat in Corinth's stately town, Polytus' son, a seer of old renown. Oft had the father told his early doom, by arms abroad or slow disease at home. He climbed his vessel, prodigal of breath, and chose the certain glorious path to death. Beneath his ear the pointed arrow went, the soul came issuing at the narrow vent. His limbs, unnerved, drop useless on the ground, and everlasting darkness shades him round. Nor knew great Hector how his legions yield, wrapped in the cloud and tumult of the field. Wide on the left the force of Greece commands, and conquest hovers o'er Achaean bands, with such a tide superior virtue swayed, and he that shakes the solid earth gave aid. But in the center Hector fixed remained, where first the gates were forced, and bulwarks gained there, on the margin of the hoary deep, their naval station where the Ajaxes keep, and where low walls confine the beating tides, whose humble barrier scarce the foe divides, where late in fight both foot and horse engaged, and all the thunder of the battle raged. There joined, the whole Boeotian strength remains, the proud Ionians with their sweeping trains, Locrians and Phthians, and Epean force, but joined, repel not Hector's fiery course. The flower of Athens, Stichius, Phaedus, led Bias and great Menestheus at their head. Meges the strong the Epean bands controlled, and Dracius prudent, and Amphion bold. The Phthians, Medon, famed for martial might, and brave Podarces, active in the fight. This drew from Phylacus his noble line Iphiclus' son, and that Iliad thine, young Ajax' brother by a stolen embrace. He dwelt far distant from his native place. By his fierce stepdame from his father's reign expelled and exiled for her brother slain, these rule the Phthians, and their arms employ, mixed with Boeotians, on the shores of Troy. Now side by side, with like unwearied care, each Ajax labored through the field of war. So, when two lordly bulls, with equal toil, force the bright plowshare through the fallow soil, joined to one yoke, the stubborn earth they tear, and trace large furrows with the shining share, o'er their huge limbs the foam descends in snow, and streams of sweat down their sour foreheads flow. A train of heroes followed through the field, who bore by turns great Ajax, sevenfold shield, whene'er he breathed, remissive of his might tired with the incessant slaughters of the fight. No following troops his brave associate grace, in close engagement and unpracticed race, the Locrian squadrons nor the javelin wield, nor bear the helm, nor lift the moony shield, but skilled from far the flying shaft to wing, or whirl the sounding pebble from the sling, dexterous with these they aim a certain wound, or fell the distant warrior to the ground. Thus in the van the Telamonian train, thronged in bright arms, a pressing fight maintain. Far in the rear the Locrian archers lie, whose stones and arrows intercept the sky. The mingled tempest on the foes they pour, Troy's scattering orders open to the shower. Now had the Greeks eternal fame acquired, and the galled Ilians to their walls retired. But sage Polydamas, discreetly brave, addressed great Hector, and this counsel gave. Though great in all, thou seem'st averse to lend impartial audience to a faithful friend. To gods and men thy matchless worth is known, and every art of glorious war thy own. But in cool thought and counsel to excel, how widely differs this from warring well. Content with what the bounteous gods have given, seek not alone to engross the gifts of heaven. To some the powers of bloody war belong, to some sweet music and the charm of song, to few, and wondrous few, has Jove assigned a wise, extensive, all-considering mind their guardians these, the nations round confess, and towns and empires for their safety bless. If heaven have lodged this virtue in my breast attend, O Hector! What I judge the best, see, as thou mov'st, on dangers spread, and war's whole fury burns around thy head. Behold, distressed within yon hostile wall, how many Trojans yield, disperse, or fall? What troops, outnumbered, scarce the war maintain? And what brave heroes at the ships lie slain? Here cease thy fury, and the chiefs and kings convoked to council weigh the sum of things. Whether the gods succeeding our desires, to yon tall ships to bear the Trojan fires, or quit the fleet, and pass unhurt away, contented with the conquest of the day. I fear, lest Greece, not yet undone, pay the large debt of last revolving sun, Achilles, great Achilles, yet remains on yonder decks, and yet o'erlooks the plains. The council pleased, and Hector, with a bound, leaped from his chariot on the trembling ground, swift as he leaped his clanging arms resound. To guard this post, he cried, thy art employ, and here detain the scattered youth of Troy. Where yonder heroes faint, I bend my way, and hasten back to end the doubtful day. This said, the towering chief prepares to go, shakes his white plumes that to the breezes flow, and seems a moving mountain topped with snow. Through all his host, inspiring force, he flies, and bids anew the martial thunder rise. To Panthus' son, at Hector's high command haste the bold leaders of the Trojan band. But round the battlements, and round the plain for many a chief he looked, but looked in vain, Deiphobus, nor Helenus the seer, nor Asius' son, nor Asius' self appear. For these were pierced with many a ghastly wound, some cold in death, some groaning on the ground, some low in dust. A mournful object lay, high on the wall some breathed their souls away. Far on the left, amid the throng he found, cheering the troops and dealing deaths around the graceful Paris, whom with fury moved, opprobrious thus, impatient chief reproved. Ill-fated Paris, slave to womankind, as smooth of face as fraudulent of mind. Where is Deiphobus, where Asius gone? The godlike father, and intrepid son. The force of Helenus, dispensing fate, and great Othryoneus, so feared of late. Black fate hangs o'er thee from avenging gods, imperial Troy from her foundations nods, whelmed in thy country's ruin shalt thou fall, and one devouring vengeance swallow all. When Paris thus, my brother and my friend, thy warm impatience makes thy tongue offend, in other battles I deserved thy blame, though then not deedless, nor unknown to fame. But since yon rampart by thy arms lay low, I scattered slaughter from my fatal bow. The chiefs you seek on yonder shore lie slain, of all those heroes, 2 alone remain, Deiphobus and Helenus the seer, each now disabled by a hostile spear. Go then, successful, where thy soul inspires. This heart and hand shall second all thy fires. What with this arm I can, prepare to know, till death for death be paid, and blow for blow. But 'tis not ours, with forces not our own to combat. Strength is of the gods alone. These words the hero's angry mind assuage, then fierce they mingle where the thickest rage. Around Polydamas, disdained with blood Cebrian Phalces, stern Orpheus stood, Pomus with Polypoetes the divine, and 2 bold brothers of Hippotion's line, who reached fair Ilion from Ascania far, the former day, the next engaged in war. As when from gloomy clouds a whirlwind springs, that bears Jove's thunder on its dreadful wings, wide o'er the blasted fields the tempest sweeps, then, gathered, settles on the hoary deeps, the afflicted deeps tumultuous mix and roar. The waves behind impel the waves before, wide rolling, foaming high and tumbling to the shore. Thus rank on rank, the thick battalions throng, chief urged on chief, and man drove man along. Far o'er the plains, in dreadful order bright, the brazen arms reflect a beamy light. Full in the blazing van great Hector shined, like Mars commissioned to confound mankind. Before him flaming his enormous shield like the broad sun, illumined all the field, his nodding helm emits a streamy ray, his piercing eyes through all the battle stray, and while beneath his targe he flashed along, shot terrors round, that withered e'en the strong. Thus stalked he, dreadful death was in his look, whole nations feared, but not an Argive shook. The towering Ajax with an ample stride advanced the first, and thus the chief defied. Hector, come on, thy empty threats forbear. Tease not thy arm, tease thundering Jove we fear. The skill of war to us not idly given, lo. Greece is humbled, not by Troy but heaven. Vain are the hopes that haughty mind imparts to force our fleet. The Greeks have hands and hearts. Long ere in flames our lofty navy fall, your boasted city and your God-built wall shall sink beneath us, smoking on the ground, and spread a long unmeasured ruin round. The time shall come when, chased along the plain, even thou shalt call on Jove and call in vain, even thou shalt wish to aid thy desperate course. The wings of falcons for thy flying horse shalt run, forgetful of a warrior's fame, while clouds of friendly dust conceal thy shame. As thus he spoke, behold, in open view, on sounding wings a dexter eagle flew. To Jove's glad omen all the Grecians rise, and hail, with shouts, his progress through the skies. Far-echoing clamors bound from side to side, they ceased, and thus the chief of Troy replied. From whence this menace, this insulting strain? Enormous boaster, doomed to vaunt in vain. So may the gods on Hector life bestow, not that short life which mortals lead below, but such as those of Jove's high lineage born, the blue-eyed maid, or he that gilds the morn, as this decisive day shall end the fame of Greece, and Argus be no more a name. And thou, imperious, if thy madness wait the lance of Hector, thou shalt meet thy fate. That giant corse, extended on the shore, shall largely feast the fowls with fat and gore. He said, and like a lion stalked along, with shouts incessant earth and ocean rung, sent from his following host. The Grecian train with answering thunders filled the echoing plain, a shout that tore heaven's concave, and above shook the fixed splendors of the throne of Jove. Greek earrings. Book 14. Argument. Juno deceives Jupiter by the girdle of Venus. Nestor, sitting at the table with Machaon, is alarmed with the increasing clamor of war, and hastens to Agamemnon. On his way, he meets that prince with Diomed and Ulysses, whom he informs of the extremity of the danger. Agamemnon proposes to make their escape by night, which Ulysses withstands. To which Diomed adds his advice that, wounded as they were, they should go forth and encourage the army with their presence, which advice is pursued. Juno, seeing the partiality of Jupiter to the Trojans, forms a design to overreach him. She sets off her charms with the utmost care, and the more surely to enchant him, obtains the magic girdle of Venus. She then applies herself to the god of sleep, and with some difficulty persuades him to seal the eyes of Jupiter. This done, she goes to Mount Ida, where the god, at first sight, is ravished with her beauty, sinks in her embraces, and is laid asleep. Neptune takes advantage of his slumber and succors the Greeks. Hector is struck to the ground with a prodigious stone by Ajax and carried off from the battle. Several actions succeed, till the Trojans, much distressed, are obliged to give way. The lesser Ajax signalizes himself in a particular manner. But not the genial feast nor flowing bowl could charm the cares of Nestor's watchful soul. His startled ears the increasing cries attend. Then thus, impatient, to his wounded friend. What new alarm, divine Machaon, say, what mixed events attend this mighty day? Hark! How the shouts divide, and how they meet, and now come full and thicken to the fleet. Here with the cordial draught dispel thy care. Let Hecame the strengthening bath prepare, refresh thy wound, and cleanse the clotted gore while I the adventures of the day explore. He said, and seizing Thrasime's shield, his valiant offspring, hastened to the field. That day the son his father's buckler bore, then snatched a lance and issued from the door. Soon as the prospect opened to his view, his wounded eyes the scene of sorrow knew, dire disarray. The tumult of the fight, the wall in ruins, and the Greeks in flight. As when old ocean's silent surface sleeps, the waves just heaving on the purple deeps, while yet the expected tempest hangs on high, weighs down the cloud, and blackens in the sky, the mass of waters will no wind obey. Jove sends one gust, and bids them roll away. While wavering counsels thus his mind engage, fluctuates in doubtful thought the Pylian sage, to join the host or to the general haste. Debating long, he fixes on the last, yet, as he moves, the sight his bosom warms. The field rings dreadful with the clang of arms, the gleaming falchions flash, the javelins fly, blows echo blows, and all or kill or die. Him in his march the wounded princes meet, by tardy steps ascending from the fleet. the king of men, Ulysses the divine, and who to Tydeus owes his noble line, their ships at distance from the battle stand, in lines advanced along the shelving strand, whose bay the fleet unable to contain at length. Beside the margin of the main, rank above rank, the crowded ships they moor, who landed first, lay highest on the shore. Supported on the spears, they took their way, unfit to fight, but anxious for the day. Nestor's approach alarmed each Grecian breast, whom thus the general of the host addressed. O grace and glory of the Achaean name, what drives thee, Nestor, from the field of fame? Shall then proud Hector see his boast fulfilled, our fleets in ashes, and our heroes killed? Such was his threat, now too soon made good, on many a Grecian bosom writ in blood. Is every heart inflamed with equal rage against your king, nor will one chief engage. And have I lived to see with mournful eyes in every Greek a new Achilles rise? Gerenian Nestor then, so fate has willed, and all-confirming time has fate fulfilled. Not he that thunders from the aerial bower, not Jove himself, upon the past has power. The wall, our late inviolable bound, and best defense, lies smoking on the ground. Even to the ships their conquering arms extend, and groans of slaughtered Greeks to heaven ascend. On speedy measures, then employ your thought in such distress. If counsel profit aught, arms cannot much. Though Mars our souls in sight, these gaping wounds withhold us from the fight. To him the monarch, that our army bends, that Troy triumphant our high fleet ascends, and that the rampart, late our surest trust and best defense, lies smoking in the dust, all this from Jove's afflictive hand we bear, who, far from Argus, wills our ruin here. Past are the days when happier Greece was blessed, and all his favor, all his aid confessed. Now heaven averse, our hands from battle ties, and lifts the Trojan glory to the skies. Cease we at length to waste our blood in vain, and launch what ships lie nearest to the main, leave these at anchor, till the coming night. Then, if impetuous Troy forbear the fight, bring all to sea, and hoist each sail for flight. Better from evils, well foreseen, to run, than perish in the danger we may shun. Thus he. The sage Ulysses thus replies, while anger flashed from his disdainful eyes. What shameful words, unkingly as thou art, fall from that trembling tongue and timorous heart? O were thy sway the curse of meaner powers, and thou the shame of any host but ours. A host by Jove endued with martial might, and taught to conquer or to fall in fight, adventurous combats and bold wars to wage, employed our youth, and yet employs our age. And wilt thou thus desert the Trojan plain? And have whole streams of blood been spilt in vain? In such base sentence if thou couch thy fear, speak it in whispers, lest a Greek should hear. Lives there a man so dead to fame, who dares to think such meanness, or the thought declares? And comes it even from him, whose sovereign sway the banded legions of all Greece obey? Is this a general's voice that calls to flight, while war hangs doubtful, while his soldiers fight? What more could Troy? What yet their fate denies thou givest the foe, all Greece becomes their prize. No more the troops, our hoisted sails in view, themselves abandoned, shall the fight pursue, but thy ships flying with despair shall see, and owe destruction to a prince like thee. Thy just reproofs, Atrides' calm replies, like arrows pierce me, for thy words are wise. Unwilling as I am to lose the host, I force not Greece to quit this hateful coast. Glad I submit, whoe'er, or young, or old, aught, more conducive to our weal, unfold. Tydides cut him short, and thus began. Such counsel if you seek, behold the man who boldly gives it, and what he shall say, young though he be, disdain not to obey. A youth, who from the mighty Tydeus springs, may speak to councils and assembled kings. Hear then in me the great Oenid's son, whose honored dust his race of glory run, lies whelmed in ruins of the Theban wall, brave in his life, and glorious in his fall. With 3 bold sons was generous Prothous blessed, who Pleuron's walls and Calydon possessed, Meles and Agrius, but who far surpassed the rest in courage, Oeneus was the last. From him, my sire. From Calydon expelled, he passed to Argus, and in exile dwelled the monarch's daughter there. So Jove ordained he won, and flourished where Adrastus reigned. There, rich in fortune's gifts, his acres tilled, beheld his vines their liquid harvest yield, and numerous flocks that whitened all the field. Such Tydeus was, the foremost once in fame, nor lives in Greece a stranger to his name. Then, what for common good my thoughts inspire attend, and in the son respect the sire. Though sore of battle, though with wounds oppressed, let each go forth and animate the rest. Advance the glory which he cannot share, though not partaker, witness of the war. But lest new wounds on wounds o'erpar us quite, beyond the missile javelin's sounding flight, safe let us stand, and, from the tumult far, inspire the ranks and rule the distant war. He added not, the listening kings obey, slow moving on, Atrides leads the way. The god of ocean, to inflame their rage appears a warrior furrowed o'er with age. Pressed in his own, the general's hand he took, and thus the venerable hero spoke. Atrides, lo, with what disdainful eye Achilles sees his country's forces fly, blind, impious man, whose anger is his guide, who glories in unutterable pride. So may he perish, so may Jove disclaim the wretch relentless, and o'erwhelm with shame. But heaven forsakes not thee. O'er yonder sands soon shall thou view the scattered Trojan bands fly diverse, while proud kings, and chiefs renowned, driven heaps on heaps, with clouds involved around of rolling dust, their winged wheels employ to hide their ignominious heads in Troy. He spoke, then rushed amid the warrior crew, and sent his voice before him as he flew, loud, as the shout encountering armies yield when twice 10,000 shake the laboring field, such was the voice, and such the thundering sound of him whose trident rends the solid ground. Each Argive bosom beats to meet the fight, and grisly war appears a pleasing sight. Meantime Saturnia from Olympus, brow, high-throned in gold, beheld the fields below, with joy the glorious conflict she surveyed, where her great brother gave the Grecians aid. But placed aloft, on Ida's shady height she sees her Jove, and trembles at the sight. Jove to deceive, what methods shall she try, what arts to blind his all-beholding eye? At length she trusts her power, resolved to prove the old, yet still successful, cheat of love, against his wisdom to oppose her charms, and lull the Lord of thunders in her arms. Swift to her bright apartment she repairs, sacred to dress and beauty's pleasing cares. With skill divine had Vulcan formed the bower, safe from access of each intruding power. Touched with her secret key, the doors unfold, self-closed, behind her shut the valves of gold. Here first she bathes, and round her body pours soft oils of fragrance and ambrosial showers. The winds, perfumed, the balmy gale convey through heaven, through earth, and all the aerial way, spirit divine, whose exhalation greets the sense of gods with more than mortal sweets. Thus while she breathed of heaven, with decent pride her artful hands the radiant tresses tied, part on her head in shining ringlets rolled, part o'er her shoulders waved like melted gold. Around her next a heavenly mantle flowed, that rich with Pallas, labored colors glowed. Large clasps of gold the foldings gathered round, a golden zone her swelling bosom bound. Far-beaming pendants tremble in her ear, each gem illumined with a triple star. Then o'er her head she cast a veil more white than new-fallen snow, and dazzling as the light. Last her fair feet celestial sandals grace. Thus issuing radiant with majestic pace, forth from the dome the imperial goddess moves, and calls the mother of the smiles and loves. How long, to Venus thus apart she cried, shall human strife celestial minds divide? Ah, yet will Venus aid Saturnia's joy, and set aside the cause of Greece and Troy. Let heaven's dread empress, Cytherea said, speak her request, and deem her will obeyed. Then grant me, said the queen, those conquering charms, that power, which mortals and immortals warms, that love, which melts mankind in fierce desires, and burns the sons of heaven with sacred fires. For lo, I haste to those remote abodes, where the great parents, sacred source of gods, Ocean and Tethys their old empire keep, on the last limits of the land and deep. In their kind arms my tender years were past. What time old Saturn, from Olympus cast, of upper heaven to Jove resigned the reign, whelmed under the huge mass of earth and main. For strife, I hear, has made the union cease, which held so long that ancient pair in peace. What honor and what love shall I obtain, if I compose those fatal feuds again, once more their minds in mutual ties engage, and, what my youth has owed, repay their age? She said. With awe divine, the queen of love obeyed the sister and the wife of Jove, and from her fragrant breast the zone embraced, with various skill and high embroidery graced. In this was every art and every charm to win the wisest and the coldest warm, fond love, the gentle vow, the gay desire, the kind deceit, the still reviving fire, persuasive speech, and the more persuasive sighs, silence that spoke, and eloquence of eyes. This on her hand the Cyprian goddess laid. Take this, and with it all thy wish, she said. With smiles she took the charm, and smiling pressed the powerful cestus to her snowy breast. Then Venus to the courts of Jove withdrew, whilst from Olympus pleased Saturnia flew. O'er high Pieria thence her course she bore, o'er fair Amathia's ever-pleasing shore, o'er Hemis, hills with snows eternal crowned, nor once her flying foot approached the ground. Then taking wing from Athos, lofty steep she speeds to Lemnos o'er the rolling deep, and seeks the cave of death's half-brother, sleep. Sweet pleasing sleep. Saturnia thus began, who spread'st thy empire o'er each god and man, if e'er obsequious to thy Juno's will, O power of slumbers. Hear and favor still. Shed thy soft dews on Jove's immortal eyes, while sunk in love's entrancing joys he lies. A splendid footstool and a throne that shine with gold unfading, Somnus, shall be thine, the work of Vulcan, to indulge thy ease when wine and feasts thy golden humors please. Imperial dame, the balmy power replies, great Saturn's heir and empress of the skies. O'er other gods I spread my easy chain, the sire of all, old ocean, owns my reign. And his hushed waves lie silent on the main. But how, unbidden, shall I dare to steep Jove's awful temples in the dew of sleep? Long since, too venturous, at thy bold command, on those eternal lids I laid my hand. What time, deserting Ilion's wasted plain, his conquering son, Alcides, ploughed the main. When lo! The deeps arise, the tempests roar, and drive the hero to the cone shore. Great Jove, awaking, shook the blessed abodes with rising wrath and tumbled gods on gods. Me chief he sought, and from the realms on high had hurled indignant to the nether sky. But gentle night, to whom I fled for aid, the friend of earth and heaven, her wings displayed, empowered the wrath of gods and men to tame, even Jove revered the venerable dame. Vain are thy fears, the queen of heaven replies, and, speaking, rolls her large majestic eyes. Think'st thou that Troy has Jove's high favor won, like great Alcides, his all-conquering son? Hear and obey the mistress of the skies, nor for the deed expect a vulgar prize. For know, thy loved one shall be ever thine, the youngest grace, Pasithea the divine. Swear then, he said, by those tremendous floods that roar through hell, and bind the invoking gods, let the great parent earth one hand sustain, and stretch the other o'er the sacred main. Call the black Titans, that with Cronos dwell, to hear and witness from the depths of hell, that she, my loved one, shall be ever mine, the youngest grace, Pasithea the divine. The queen assents, and from the infernal bowers invokes the sable subtartarian powers, and those who rule the inviolable floods, whom mortals name the dread Titanian gods. Sleep escaping from the wrath of Jupiter. Then swift as wind, o'er Lemnos, smoky isle they wing their way, and imbrues sea-beat soil, through air, unseen, involved in darkness glide, and light on Lectos on the point of Ide. Mother of savages, whose echoing hills are heard resounding with 100 rills. Fair Ida trembles underneath the god, hushed are her mountains, and her forests nod. There on a fir, whose spiry branches rise to join its summit to the neighboring skies, dark in embowering shade, concealed from sight, sat Sleep, in likeness of the bird of night. Chalcis his name by those of heavenly birth, but called Simeindes by the race of earth. To Ida's top successful Juno flies, great Jove surveys her with desiring eyes, the god, whose lightning sets the heavens on fire, through all his bosom feels the fierce desire. Fierce as when first by stealth he seized her charms, mixed with her soul, and melted in her arms. Fixed on her eyes he fed his eager look, then pressed her hand, and thus with transport spoke. Why comes my goddess from the ethereal sky, and not her steeds and flaming chariot nigh? Then she, I haste to those remote abodes where the great parents of the deathless gods, the reverend ocean and grey Tethys, reign on the last limits of the land and main. I visit these, to whose indulgent cares I owe the nursing of my tender years. For strife, I hear, has made that union cease which held so long that ancient pair in peace. The steeds prepared my chariot to convey o'er earth and seas, and through the aerial way wait under-eyed. Of thy superior power to ask consent, I leave the Olympian bower, nor seek, unknown to thee, the sacred cells deep under seas, where hoary ocean dwells. For that, said Jove, suffice another day. But eager love denies the least delay. Let softer cares the present hour employ, and be these moments sacred all to joy. Ne'er did my soul so strong a passion prove, or for an earthly or a heavenly love, not when I pressed Ixion's matchless dame, whence rose Pirithous like the gods in fame, not when fair Danae felt the shower of gold stream into life, whence Perseus brave and bold. Not thus I burned for either Theban dame, Bacchus from that Alcides came, nor Phoenix, daughter, beautiful and young, whence godlike Rhadamanth and Minos sprung. Not thus I burned for fair Latona's face, nor comelier Ceres, more majestic grace. Not thus even for thyself I felt desire, as now my veins receive the pleasing fire. He spoke, the goddess with the charming eyes glows with celestial red, and thus replies, Is this a scene for love? On Ida's height, exposed to mortal and immortal sight, our joys profaned by each familiar eye, the sport of heaven and fable of the sky, how shall I e'er review the blessed abodes, or mix among the senate of the gods? Shall I not think that, with disordered charms, all heaven beholds me recent from thy arms? With skill divine has Vulcan formed thy bower, sacred to love and to the genial hour. If such thy will, to that recess retire, in secret there indulge thy soft desire. She ceased, and, smiling with superior love, thus answered mild the cloud-compelling Jove. Nor god nor mortal shall our joys behold, shaded with clouds and circumfused in gold, not even the sun, who darts through heaven his rays, and whose broad eye the extended earth surveys. Gazing he spoke, and, kindling at the view, his eager arms around the goddess threw. Glad earth perceives, and from her bosom pours unbidden herbs and voluntary flowers. Thick new-born violets a soft carpet spread, and clustering lotos swelled the rising bed, and sudden hyacinths the turf bestrow, and flamy crocus made the mountain glow. There golden clouds conceal the heavenly pair, steeped in soft joys and circumfused with air, celestial dews, descending o'er the ground, perfume the mount, and breathe ambrosia round. At length, with love and sleep's soft power oppressed, the panting thunderer nods and sinks to rest. Now to the navy borne on silent wings, to Neptune's ear soft, sleep his message brings beside him sudden, unperceived he stood, and thus with gentle words addressed the god. Now Neptune, now the important hour employ, to check awhile the haughty hopes of Troy, while Jove yet rests, while yet my vapors shed the golden vision round his sacred head, for Juno's love and Somnus, pleasing ties, have closed those awful and eternal eyes. Thus having said, the power of slumber flew on human lids to drop the balmy dew. Neptune, with zeal increased, renews his care, and towering in the foremost ranks of war, indignant thus, O once of martial fame! O Greeks! If yet ye can deserve the name, this half-recovered day shall Troy obtain. Shall Hector thunder at your ships again? Lo! Still he vaunts, and threats the fleet with fires, while stern Achilles in his wrath retires. One hero's loss too tamely you deplore, be still yourselves, and ye shall need no more. O yet, if glory any bosom warms, brace on your firmest helms, and stand to arms. His strongest spear each valiant Grecian wield. Each valiant Grecian sees his broadest shield let to the weak, the lighter arms belong, the ponderous targe be wielded by the strong. Thus armed not Hector shall our presence stay, myself ye Greeks. Myself will lead the way. Greek shield. The troops assent, their martial arms they change, the busy chiefs their banded legions range. The kings, though wounded, and oppressed with pain, with helpful hands themselves assist the train. The strong and cumbrous arms the valiant wield, the weaker warrior takes a lighter shield. Thus sheathed in shining brass, in bright array the legions march, and Neptune leads the way. His brandished falchion flames before their eyes, like lightning flashing through the frighted skies. Clad in his might, the earth-shaking power appears, pale mortals tremble and confess their fears. Troy's great defender stands alone unawed, arms his proud host, and dares oppose a god, and lo! The god and wondrous man appear, the sea's stern ruler there and Hector here. The roaring main, at her great master's call, rose in huge ranks and formed a watery wall around the ships. Seas hanging are the shores both armies join, earth thunders, ocean roars. Not half so loud the bellowing deeps resound. When stormy winds disclose the dark profound, less loud the winds that from the Aeolian hall roar through the woods, and make whole forests fall, less loud the woods, when flames in torrents pour, catch the dry mountain, and its shades devour. With such a rage the meeting hosts are driven, and such a clamor shakes the sounding heaven. The first bold javelin, urged by Hector's force, direct at Ajax. Bosom winged its course, but there no pass the crossing belts afford. One braced his shield, and one sustained his sword. Then back the disappointed Trojan drew, and cursed the lance that unavailing flew, but scaped not Ajax. His tempestuous hand a ponderous stone upheaving from the sand, where heaps laid loose beneath the warrior's feet, or served to ballast, or to prop the fleet, tossed round and round, the missive marble flings on the raised shield the fallen ruin rings, full on his breast and throat with force descends. Nor deadened there its giddy fury spends, but whirling on, with many a fiery round, smokes in the dust, and plows into the ground. As when the bolt, red hissing from above darts on the consecrated plant of Jove, the mountain oak in flaming ruin lies, black from the blow, and smokes of sulphur rise. Stiff with amaze the pale beholders stand, and own the terrors of the almighty hand. So lies great Hector prostrate on the shore, his slackened hand deserts the lance it bore, his following shield the fallen chief o'erspread. Beneath his helmet dropped his fainting head, his load of armor, sinking to the ground, clanks on the field, a dead and hollow sound. Loud shouts of triumph fill the crowded plain, Greece sees, in hope, Troy's great defender slain. All spring to seize him, storms of arrows fly, and thicker javelins intercept the sky. In vain an iron tempest hisses round, he lies protected, and without a wound. Polydamas, Agenor the divine, the pious warrior of Anchises line, and each bold leader of the Lycian band with covering shields, a friendly circle, stand, his mournful followers with assistant care. The groaning hero to his chariot bear, his foaming coursers, swifter than the wind, speed to the town, and leave the war behind. When now they touched the mead's enameled side, where gentle Xanthus rolls his easy tide, with watery drops the chief they sprinkle round, placed on the margin of the flowery ground. Raised on his knees, he now ejects the gore, now faints anew. Low sinking on the shore by fits he breathes, half views the fleeting skies, and seals again, by fits, his swimming eyes. Soon as the Greeks the chief's retreat beheld, with double fury each invades the field. Oilean Ajax first his javelin sped, pierced by whose point the son of Oenops bled. Satnius the brave, whom beauteous knees bore amidst her flocks on Satnio's silver shore. Struck through the belly's rim, the warrior lies supine, and shades eternal veil his eyes. An arduous battle rose around the dead, by turns the Greeks, by turns the Trojans bled. Fired with revenge, Polydamas drew near, and at Prothoenor shook the trembling spear, the driving javelin through his shoulder thrust. He sinks to earth and grasps the bloody dust. Lo, thus, the victor cries, we rule the field, and thus their arms the race of Panthus wield. From this unerring hand there flies no dart, but bathes its point within a Grecian heart. Propped on that spear to which thou owest thy fall, go, guide thy darksome steps to Pluto's dreary hall. He said, and sorrow touched each Argive breast, the soul of Ajax burned above the rest. As by his side the groaning warrior fell, at the fierce foe he launched his piercing steel, the foe, reclining, shunned the flying death. But fate, Archilochus, demands thy breath, thy lofty birth no succor could impart. The wings of death o'ertook thee on the dart, swift to perform heaven's fatal will, it fled full on the juncture of the neck and head, and took the joint, and cut the nerves in twain. The dropping head first tumbled on the plain. So just the stroke, that yet the body stood erect, then rolled along the sands in blood. Here, proud Polydamas, here turn thy eyes. The towering Ajax loud insulting cries, say, is this chief extended on the plain a worthy vengeance for Prothoenor slain? Mark well his port, his figure and his face, nor speak him vulgar, nor of vulgar race. Some lines, methinks, may make his lineage known, Antenor's brother, or perhaps his son. He spake and smiled severe, for well he knew the bleeding youth. Troy saddened at the view. But furious Acamas avenged his cause, as Promachus his slaughtered brother draws, he pierced his heart. Such fate attends you all, proud Argives, destined by our arms to fall. Not Troy alone, but haughty Greece, shall share the toils, the sorrows, and the wounds of war. Behold your Promachus deprived of breath, a victim owed to my brave brother's death. Not unappeased, he enters Pluto's gate, who leaves a brother to revenge his fate. Heart-piercing anguish struck the Grecian host, but touched the breast of bold Peneleus most. At the proud boaster he directs his course. The boaster flies and shuns superior force. But young Ilioneus received the spear, Ilioneus, his father's only care. Phorbas the rich of all the Trojan train whom Hermes loved and taught the arts of gain, full in his eye the weapon chanced to fall, and from the fibers scooped the rooted ball, drove through the neck, and hurled him to the plain. He lifts his miserable arms in vain. Swift his broad falchion fierce Peneleus spread, and from the spouting shoulders struck his head, to earth at once the head and helmet fly. The lance, yet sticking through the bleeding eye, the victor seized, and, as aloft he shook the gory visage, thus insulting spoke. Trojans, your great Ilioneus behold. Haste, to his father let the tale be told. Let his high roofs resound with frantic woe, such as the house of Promachus must know. Let doleful tidings greet his mother's ear, such as to Promachus, sad spouse we bear, when we victorious shall to Greece return, and the pale matron in our triumphs mourn. Dreadful he spoke, then tossed the head on high. The Trojans hear, they tremble and they fly. Aghast they gaze around the fleet and wall, and dread the ruin that impends on all. Daughters of Jove, that on Olympus shine, ye all beholding, all recording 9. O say, when Neptune made proud Ilion yield, what chief, what hero first imbrued the field? Of all the Grecians what immortal name, and whose blessed trophies will ye raise to fame? Thou first, great Ajax. On the unsanguined plain laid Hiadius, leader of the Mysian train. Phalces and Murmur, Nestor's son o'erthrew, bold Merion, Mores and Hippotion slew. Strong Periphetes and Prethune bled, by Teucer's arrows mingled with the dead, pierced in the flank by Menelaus' steel, his people's pastor. Hyperenor fell, eternal darkness wrapped the warrior round, and the fierce soul came rushing through the wound. But stretched in heaps before Aelius, son, fall mighty numbers run Ajax the less, of all the Grecian race skilled in pursuit and swiftest in the chase. Bacchus. Book 15. Argument.